Welcome to Financial Paladin Talk. I am your host today, Ellie Robison, and I have our beautiful co-host with us today, Tony Shore. Hi,
Awesome.
Tony.
Hey, Ellie.
How
Good
are
to
you?
see you.
Good
Well,
seeing you.
I am fantabulous.
Good.
Swelligant.
Good.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful week. Like, the weather's
Oh,
great.
it's been so good.
I'm craving, like, fall time. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Well, this is the time of year it's great. I love
really
it. It's
is.
sunny. It's nice
I know.
outside. I love this. It's
Right.
great. I mean, it's, this time of year, the state fair, the Great Minnesota
Yep.
Get-Together. Did you go? I heard the whole Paladin
Yes,
team
we did.
took a team building outing.
It was
The
so much
staff
fun.
at
It was
Paladin?
yes, and like I probably had more drinks than food. It was a hot summer day. It was last
Yes.
Friday.
You stayed
and
hydrated, lots
exactly.
of lemonade
we
and
did
water.
multiple laps around the whole
Yeah.
area. It
Good.
was so much fun though.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Yeah, and did Jeff Quick behave himself? I mean, that's the first person
He
I'm
couldn't
concerned.
make it. He already had plans.
No
for
wonder
the
it was
weekend.
so much fun.
Yeah.
I'm
Aw.
teasing. I'm kidding.
He can handle it.
I'm kidding. I like Jeff as far as he knows.
Yeah, so do
But
we.
Jeff Foley was there. I know that. I saw pictures.
Oh, gosh,
It
yeah.
looked like he was having fun.
Oh yeah, he
Yeah.
had multiple corn on the cobs. We went around shopping. That was my thing that I wanted to do. I was like, we have to go to the grandstand.
Oh,
I want to
yeah.
go check out the little vendors.
You have to walk through and check out the vendors in the
You're like,
grandstand.
okay, we gotta do what Ellie
It's
wants.
a must.
Yeah.
It's a must. And I even saw Matt Bryan made it, right?
Yeah, he did.
Wow.
He's a great addition. He
Yeah.
just makes it feel very natural being a part of the crew, even though he's been with us.
He's
for
very
a month
easy
or
and
two.
laid back.
Yeah.
He's a
yeah.
great guy. We've
He
had
is.
him on the show a couple of times
Oh, good.
already.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's great. Now, you are bringing a great topic to the show. This
I
is going to be a
am.
very special episode
I'm very
of
excited.
Paladin Financial Talk because Ellie has brought a topic that I don't think we've really covered this on the show before. Tell us what the topic is about today.
Well, we're gonna talk about fire.
Fire. I love it.
Tony, have you heard about the fire movement at all?
I have to be honest, I actually have.
Okay.
I had not until I started working with people in the financial advisory world, and then somebody brought an article to my attention
Okay.
about FIRE, and so I do know about the FIRE movement.
Okay. Yes. And so it stands for Financial Independence Retire Early. Who knows when it started, maybe a couple decades ago, but they have a couple rules of thumbs, which just teaches people on how to do things themselves, essentially. And so one of the rules that they follow, it's like the rule of 25, which basically it makes you multiply your expenses by the number 25 to get to your FIRE number, or that number that you need in order to fully retire. For example, okay, so let's say that your monthly expenses are $6,000 going out the door every single month. That means $72,000 per year is your annual expenses. Multiply that number by 25. Your FIRE number would be 1.8 million.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so we're talking about, just to back up just for a second before you jump
Yeah.
further in,
Yeah.
the FIRE movement, the name should explain it, but it's all about retiring early.
Correct.
Yeah. And
And-
so we're talking about people who plan on retiring very early by doing this.
And finding that golden number that you need in order to pull the plug on retiring early.
Sure. Wow.
Yes.
Well, that number 1.8 million, I mean, that's real people to some people. I mean, that's real money, I should say.
Yes.
That's real money even to, say, a Jeff Foley. That's real money.
It is a lot of money, and it sounds very overwhelming, but we'll dive into it here in a second. I wanted to touch base on like the other rule of thumb that the
Yes.
FIRE community likes to follow. That's the 4% rule, and so that kicks in after you actually pull the trigger on retiring, and that rule says that you can safely withdraw 4% of your total investable assets every single year, and then you adjust for inflation to last you essentially through the
Okay.
rest of your life. But this formula, both of those formulas are not perfect, and like we don't use that as an advisor just because it doesn't account for certain things like taxes. You don't know what your taxes are going to be 40 years from now. You don't know if you're going to have any lifestyle adjustments that might drastically change your life, or you don't know how long you're going to live for either. So It's
And
not
you don't
perfect.
know if that 4% is going to work in a year like 2022 when the market is down 20%, right?
Exactly. So again, it's not perfect, but it does give you a goal to work
A
towards.
goal and a
Yes.
guideline.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a
Sure.
rule of thumb, right?
It is a rule of thumb. Well, and it's but how do you even begin to start saving $1.8 million?
I know,
Ellie?
it's a
Come
lot.
on.
Okay,
Come on.
so couple things. Good news is, if you are young, time is on your side. Like,
All right.
that is your key factor here. And essentially, it does start with your income.
So this could work for you, but not for me, is what you're saying.
I didn't want to flat out say it, Tony.
Little tear just slowly runs down my cheek.
Okay, hold on. Let's dive into it. So it does start with your income when you're younger. And in today's day and age, you have to make sure that you're getting paid appropriately. And that has to be a priority if you want to reach your FIRE goals. You'll want a high income and frugal spending habits, essentially. And it's easier said than done. But making sure that you're, first of all, fairly compensated is a must. And then also making sure that you're budgeting appropriately so you're not just recklessly spending your money without really knowing where it's going. So being mindful of the keeping up with the Joneses mentality, that is a socioeconomic flaw. And so at the end of the day, you need to do what's in your best interest. I highly suggest checking out the book, The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley. That is an old read, but it explains how many millionaires out there, you would never guess that they're actually millionaires. They're the ones who are driving the beat-up trucks. They're living in modest homes. They're driving the Toyotas that they've had for 15 years. And at the end of the day, like, you have to do what's in your best interest if you want to reach your goals.
Didn't I see a picture of you recently or something posted with that book in the picture?
Yes, we
do.
The
Millionaire Next Door?
Yes, so Nikki is in charge of our Instagram profile, and so she gives us tasks every Saturday. We want to do a hashtag Small Business Saturday.
Sure.
And I do live in South Minneapolis. There's a lot of local little shops that I absolutely love. There is a new and used bookstore just a couple blocks down from me.
Sure.
And I love just getting a coffee on the corner. It's on 50th and Penn, and heading over to the Paper Source, paperback store. And so I did find The Millionaire Next Door, and we posted it on the Instagram. So that's where you saw it.
I saw the books. I saw the book. So it's funny you should mention that in this show. It's top of mind to you, and it is a good book. I read it a long time ago. I mean, that one's been out a while, but it's still a classic.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, a lot of good tips in there. So what do we do next? We want to make sure we feel fairly compensated. What do you mean by that?
Good question. So people are job hopping even more than ever right now, and that is going to be your quickest way to find a salary that matches your worth and your skill set. The supply and demand to fill positions, it's not slowing down whatsoever. So every job hop that you make, you can negotiate major increases that oftentimes that your current employer just isn't willing, or they just can't give you. I've heard firsthand stories of friends or clients getting anywhere between 10,000 to 50,000 increases just by making a job change. Of course, it depends on the industry that you're working in, but it does apply to most of corporate America.
Sure.
So job hopping was once upon a time frowned upon. That's not the case anymore. In 2022, so just last year, according to data from the Employee Benefit Research Institute, which it is an independent nonprofit, they said about 33% of workers over the age of 20 spent 2 years or less at their jobs.
Wow.
So there is a lot of, I don't want to say turnover, but just job hopping, because you have to do what's in your best interest. Again, you have to do what's right for you.
Yeah.
And so since your income, it's also your most valuable asset essentially for the first couple decades as you enter a career. We want to set up our clients with disability insurance as well, and with big goals. You just need that extra protection against the downturns in life that might happen. And a lot of employers, they do have long-term disabilities usually as a benefit, but most of those only pay out about 60% of your salary. And so most people can't really support a family with that kind of income if it's slashed to that capacity. So making sure that you're getting paid well, but also you have coverage on if anything bad were to happen, essentially.
Well, yeah, that's huge. Obviously, I think that you're giving up benefits by retiring early, especially health benefits. obviously a sacrifice that you might have to make if you do try this fire plan and retire early is moving, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're job hopping, it depends on what city you're in, and maybe it might not work so much in small towns to job hop and get major increases. But if you find a better job in a different city, you might have to be moving every few years. It just depends.
Okay. What's another factor that we should look at with the fire movement
Yep.
or retiring early?
So, like I said, it starts when you're young, but you have the advantage of accumulating compound interest over time.
Yes.
Have you heard about compound interest?
The eighth wonder of the world,
Yeah,
compounding
right.
interest,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
You make money on the money you make, and
Yep.
you make interest on your interest on your interest, and it
Yep.
just compounds, right?
Yes. And so I do want to break it down because when I was first getting into the financially fit community, and this was years ago when I feel like I was just a kid, but I didn't really understand what that term meant. And I had to do a lot of research to understand the concept of it. So I want to break it down for any younger clients who are new to this concept. So let's say that you have $100,000 and I put it in my high yield savings account January 1st earlier this year. Rates right now, they're paying over 4%. And in technicality terms like that, that will be a variable interest rate. But hypothetically, let's say it's fixed. It's going to be 4%. It's not going to change. So 4% of 100,000 is 4,000, right?
Yeah.
By December 31st, at the end of this year, I would have 104,000 in my high yield savings account. Let's say I don't touch it for another year. 4% off of 104,000, that's going to be $4,150, so a little bit more.
Yep.
And by the end of next year, I should have $108,100 in there. And so it's kind of a rinse and repeat concept where you're just compounding that interest on top of the principal that you're accumulating.
Yeah, and especially if when you are working, you're adding more to it along with the compounding interest. So it can really grow, but you need time. I mean, the
Exactly.
markets can work for you and investments can work for you if your time horizon is far enough. By retiring early, you're in one way extending the time you'll need to spend in retirement, though, and you're shortening that time horizon for your earning years. So that is something to think about. And, I think this is great. So obviously it makes a difference on where you're putting your money, right?
Yeah, of course. And so, I mean, my hypothetical example, it was just a high yield savings account. If you throw that money into the stock market, I mean, you're going to weather some volatility, but you're going to get higher returns over time, especially if you put money in there during, the down years and whatnot.
Yep.
And so one thing that I wanted to address is humans are pre-programmed to be bad at investing, essentially.
Yes.
Like, it's a psychological game because when the market's doing well and returns are at all-time highs, everyone's happy. They want to be investing more, and there's no complaints in our office or any advisory office, of course. But on the flip side, when there's a down year like there was last year, people are more hesitant to invest more money, and there's, it's a psychological game. And so
so people end up they're more willing to buy high when the markets are up. And sell when the markets are down and low rather than the opposite. When the markets are having a bad year, that's when you put money in.
Exactly when.
Right?
However, I mean, there is a way of taking your brain out of it or your feelings out of it. So if you dollar cost average, per se, that's going to be your best friend really over time. It's just you automate those monthly contributions no matter if the market is high or the market is low. It averages out over time, and it just takes that brain function out of your everyday life.
One way to take that emotional aspect out of it is to work with a financial professional, services professional like yourselves, right? I mean, like Paladin Financial, that way they're there because they can help you see these things and say, okay, now's time to dollar cost average, now's the time to do this. And it takes your emotions out of it because you're a little too close to the situation.
Absolutely. And so in the fire community, essentially, like, you have to save like you're a pessimist and invest like you're an optimist. That's not going to be a cookie cutter recommendation that I give to every client. It depends on your lifestyle and what you want to achieve and what you prioritize. But in terms of trying to retire early, you're tucking away every dollar into investments.
Sure. So let's talk about where you are putting your money. Go into that. What are our options?
That's also a good question, because there's three main tax type of investment accounts that you can have. Your pre-tax accounts, that's the account that most people are most familiar with. These are going to be your 401ks, your 403bs, traditional IRAs, simple IRAs, SEP IRAs, solo 401ks. There's a long list of them. But these type of accounts cannot be tapped into before 59 and a half without a penalty.
Right.
So, I mean, there are some exceptions where you can tap into it at age 55, but that's why you need to come talk to us as your financial advisor.
Sure.
It's not promised. So that's one bucket. Second bucket is your tax-free bucket. You cannot access the growth of your Roth IRA money before 59 and a half either. But we love these type of accounts. They do offer a little bit more flexibility than your pre-tax bucket. And it can help diversify your future tax planning, and it helps enhance your estate planning. But essentially, we want to use that money for the longest term, your longest time horizon out there. So your last bucket, that's going to be your non-qualified bucket. This is your brokerage account. And so this is fully liquid. You can access these these investments whenever you want, and it is taxed differently than your other buckets. At the most you can pay is ordinary income tax rates, but the least you could pay is 0%. So wide range there, but that's another reason why we want to have this incorporated into your plan. Is it's not only necessary to help bridge that gap between retiring at age 50 per se and, using this money between then and 59 and a half, where you can access your other retirement accounts. But it's also something that I want to encourage for my younger clients as well, because it just helps diversify your tax and your investable assets and your liquidity as well. So.
So if somebody's thinking about retiring at, say, age 50 or 52, and they have all their money in a 401k or an IRA or a Roth, that's a problem, because they can't access that money until 59 and a half. But what you're saying is utilize, then you have to, if you're going to do the FIRE movement, you have to have money invested in other ways to fill that gap between when you retire and when you turn 59 and a half. But you shouldn't not put any money in those retirement accounts, because eventually you are going to turn 59 and a half, and that'll kick in.
Correct.
And be more advantageous.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, bridging that gap between early retirement and essentially filing for Social Security is what you need to hold over on that. But one unexpected expense that a lot of people don't essentially think of is health insurance. You kind of mentioned it at the beginning of this.
That's a big
Private health insurance will almost suck you dry, just about. And so that's also hard to predict what it's going to look like a few decades out from now, but it is something that we address with some of our clients that are retiring early, is how do we bridge that gap between early retirement and age 65 when Medicare kicks in.
Yeah, and there's a big difference between the FIRE movement, where people are retiring as early as age 50, and a lot of people think retiring early might be 60 or 62, but I know people who absolutely can't or won't retire until 65 because of health care, because 65 is when Medicare kicks in, and if you quit work before 65, you have to cover those years with private health insurance.
Correct.
And that can be tricky. But I know that's something that you help your clients plan for. You can sit down with them, and if they really want to retire at age 52 or 62, then you have to have that as part of the plan, right? Healthcare.
Yeah, it is. It's part of the plan.
Yeah, because people don't realize how much their employers are covering of that healthcare expense.
You're essentially doubling whatever you're paying in health insurance right now. You're doubling it if you're paying it for yourself.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't expect that.
No. I think that's one thing that people who get excited about the FIRE movement aren't thinking about, and they have to make sure they check that box. I would not consider even looking at retiring early or the FIRE movement unless you're working with a firm like Paladin Financial, working with an independent financial trusted advisor who can really help you plan for these things and knows about the hurdles and the pitfalls that you will need to overcome. And then if you plan for them, I know you guys have helped clients retire early many times. And so if you want to do that, you do have to start early. Plan early and often, right? So that's huge.
Not unless you win the lottery, Tony. I mean.
Yeah, well, there are exceptions, but yeah, and I mean, think about it with today's inflation rates and the rising interest rates, college debt, the housing market the way it is, it's really expensive. It does seem impossible for a lot of people to get ahead these days. Do you have clients that are able to retire early? I know you have in the past.
I do have a handful of clients in their 30s that are well on their way to retire early. Absolutely. So it is achievable. We have to discuss what their priorities are and what they value in life. And so what we'll do at Paladin is we map out their goals of how much they should be investing into each type of bucket. We want to make sure that they're set with insurance. They set their own timeline on when they want to have their debt paid off, because it also is a factor if the house is paid off or not by the time that they want to retire, and the rest is a grind, essentially.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ellie. And, I think that a lot of people, if they're thinking about retiring early or the FIRE movement, you also have to take into consideration your spouse. If you have a spouse or a partner, you really need to look at that and make sure that it's going to work out for both of you and for your family.
It is a little bit easier to expedite the FIRE movement if you don't have kids. I have noticed that.
Sure.
And it's not intentional. It's just kids are a huge cost.
Those kids and spouses. Oh, they hold us back.
No, we don't want to say anything bad about it.
I'm teasing.
It's a factor.
I'm teasing. Well, this has been a great topic, and I'm sure it's piqued some of our listeners' interest. It's fun to also dream about, okay, if I could retire early, let's say I do this. Yeah. Let's say I work with Paladin and get on a plan and really sacrifice now so I can retire early in a few years or by 50, 52, even 55. A lot of people are working until 65, 70. So if retiring early could be anywhere before 65, in my opinion. But a lot of the FIRE movement is about really like by age 50. A lot of people are wanting to retire. But you can dream about, okay, what then? And I think you have to look at the why of it, and is it right for somebody like you? Everybody's situation is different. But this is a great topic. If our listeners have questions or want to get a plan in place, Ellie, how do they do that?
I mean, please give us a call. You can call us at 651-842-8406. But please, if you have any random questions or feedback on this topic, shoot us an email. You can shoot us an email at info@financialpaladin.com, and we're excited to hear from you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ellie. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of Paladin Financial Talk with today's host, Ellie Robison.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks.